This is a story about a little outing that my sister Tina and I used to do with our kids in the summer. For years, we'd go to old cemeteries and document the names on the headstones, especially the old abandoned graveyards. Some of the headstones were already unreadable, so we were trying to save and document as many of them as we could. Two, we were always searching for our ancestors' headstones. When they were still young, and if our kids were out of school for the summer, we'd just drag them along with us and make a day out of it. They enjoyed it because it was like an adventure to them. Sometimes we'd take picnic lunches along with us, and sometimes we'd just take them to a drive-thru for lunch because they loved doing either one. Sometimes on these outings, we'd see a wild fox or something like that. One time we found a bear claw stuck in the fence at the gate of an old cemetery in the woods. I guess the bear had gotten his claw stuck in it and somehow got away without his claw. One time we saw some wild, black, scary-looking dogs. Well, they saw us too, and that scared us half to death. So we got the heck out of there because we thought they might have been the hellhounds we'd heard about. But one of the strangest things that I can remember happening took place one year on a really hot summer day when we, along with our kids, decided to try and find an old abandoned small family plot in some woods near where we lived. We weren't related to the family, but still, knowing through rumors that it was there and abandoned, we felt we just had to find it and mark the names down somewhere. We set out early that particular morning to find it, while it was still slightly cooler than it was certainly going to get later on that day. We sort of had directions. There weren't any cell phones back then, and so we had to drive down quite a few old country roads, and we took a few wrong turns. But we finally ended up at a cemetery that we thought might be the one we were looking for. It was really old, but not necessarily abandoned. It seemed pretty well taken care of. We explored it for a little while, but finally realized it wasn't the cemetery that we'd set out to find. We noticed there was an old, unused logging road, more like a trail, going up a hill beside the cemetery, through some trees. We remembered somebody telling us that the abandoned family plot was on the top of a hill. Well, this trail didn't look like you could drive on it, so we set out walking up the trail with our kids. Her daughter Tiffany and son Ashley, and my daughter Missy and son Jamie. It took us about 15 or 20 minutes, but we finally made it to the top of the hill, and we began to look around. We were surprised at how beautiful everything looked from up there. It was a huge plateau, and we could see down and around us for miles. It looked like a logging crew or something like that had been up there at some time cutting down trees, because it was bare in places with a lot of scattered debris, cut up trees and limbs strewn all around. We noticed a group of trees that were still standing with underbrush clustered around them in one area off by itself, so we headed for that spot. And sure enough, that's where we found the headstones, looking so completely neglected. There was about 6 of them, and they were weathered and overgrown with weeds and such. We cleared them off the best we could, and we began to read and record the names and dates on them. It was extremely sad. It seemed it was an entire family that had died, one after the other, in a short span of time. We thought they had probably died from some sort of contagious illness, like smallpox or yellow fever. The dates were early 1800s. As we were doing this, Our children were running around exploring, as kids like to do. We warned them to be careful, as there was a lot of holes and ditches out there, and some dropped off or had deep slopes. It wasn't long before our daughters, Missy and Tiffany, came running up to us, all excited and out of breath. They had found a dog, they said, at the bottom of a pit. He was moaning, they said, barely alive. Well, of course we went to investigate, our sons Jamie and Ashley tagging along with us. Missy and Tiffany led us across a large bare section of land in the bright sunlight to a sloped ravine that dropped off about 3 or 4 feet deep into a gully. We looked down to where they pointed, and we were totally shocked at what we saw. We were staring down into the eyes of a beautiful, full-grown Dalmatian dog that was totally helpless. He seemed to be trapped, but he looked up at us with sad eyes and moaned pitifully. Jamie and Ashley immediately began to climb down into the pit beside him. They said he was covered in ants and he had boards and bricks on top of him, pinning him down. It was terribly heartbreaking. Jamie began to remove the debris off the poor thing, while Ashley talked softly to him and held his head up. The two of them gently lifted him up and out of the pit and laid him on the ground in front of us. It was so pitiful. Something seemed to be wrong with one of his legs. It was bent kind of strange. Jamie and Ashley climbed back out of the pit, and Jamie picked him up, and we all started back down the hill to the car. Jamie was carrying him close in his arms and talking softly to him. We could tell the poor dog was in pain, and he was so thin. He was pure skin and bones. But we had to get him out of the hot sun. It was nearly 100 degrees by then, and I'm sure you could fry an egg on one of those hot rocks laying around. I'm pretty sure if that poor dog had lain there for another hour or two, he wouldn't have survived. We couldn't imagine how he had gotten there, though. We were in the middle of nowhere, and we hadn't passed a single house for miles on the way up through those old country dirt roads and backwoods. We took him home with us and carried him inside where it was cool in the air condition. We gave him water and food, but not too much at once, because we weren't sure how long he had been there or how much he could ingest right away. But the poor thing was starving and so thirsty. After he ate and drank, we made him a nice comfy little bed, and he slept for hours. When he woke up, he seemed more energetic, and he wanted to get up and walk about and play. He was a little unsteady on one of his legs, but it didn't seem to be broken or anything like that. I think he was just stiff from being confined under the bricks and boards in one position. The kids gave him a bath and cuddled with him and were completely spoiling the heck out of the poor thing, but he seemed to be enjoying it. The next couple days, he seemed to get better and better and was putting on weight fast. You would never know by looking at him what he had been through. The kids called him Lucky Boy. We kept him for a few days, getting him back in good health the best we could. It wasn't long before he was frisky and happy and as good as new. But we couldn't find the owner, and we couldn't keep him, as we had 2 dogs of our own, so we put him up for adoption. So many people wanted to adopt him after hearing about his abandonment. Finally, a lady we knew that was a DJ at the local radio station adopted him. She had a Jeep, and she would let him ride in the front seat with her all over the place. He was truly going to be spoiled rotten. It was so cute and sweet. Well, we'll never forget the day we found him, though. And if we hadn't decided to try and find that small abandoned cemetery plot, I'm absolutely positive that beautiful Dalmatian wouldn't have lived to see another sunrise. My question, though, is how could anyone do something like that to an innocent animal? I'm guessing maybe he had gotten hit by a car, and the owners thought he had died, and sort of halfway buried him there under all that debris. Or had he gotten lost and fell into the pit, hurting his leg and couldn't get out? Except if that was the case, how had he gotten covered up by all those bricks and boards? Who knows? I'm just glad we took that trip into the woods that day, or the poor thing would have surely suffered and starved to death. You just never know how God is going to use you when you wake up in the morning. Isn't it just amazing how God can see the bigger picture and point you in the right direction? I hope you enjoyed my story. Thanks for listening.